Does your child have an IEP? Then you've come to the right place. If they have special education services, then your child is going to be transitioning from elementary, middle, or high school. What does this mean for your child? This means your school has to convene a new IEP, and they could increase or decrease services. Take a deep breath. I'm going to walk you through it. That's why inside this video, I'm taking you behind the scenes of transition IEPs to show you what they are, how to make sure those services and supports do not disappear, and most importantly, 3 red flags you want to watch out for so you can advocate like a pro. Hey, what's up? I'm April Rarig, your special education advocate to make IEPs and 504 plans so much easier. If you're new here, go ahead and click on that subscribe button to get more videos like this in your inbox, and check us out on Instagram at RiseEdAdvocacy. Here's what you need to know. Individual education plans, also known as an IEP, are regulated under IDA law. Here's the problem. Just like everyone else at your child's school, your child with an IEP is going to be transitioning from preschool to elementary school, elementary to middle school, or even middle school to high school. What am I saying? I'm saying that your team is going to have to convene a very specialized meeting, but they might not even tell you about it. More about this in just a minute, and this is exactly why I'm so excited that you're watching this video. So what am I saying? I'm saying unless your child goes to what's called a K-12 or what's known as a SPAN school, your child is going to be moving to a new campus. This means more expectations, more transitions, more teachers, possibly new students, a ton of other expectations and changes that are going to be beyond the fact that your child is already neurodiverse or may have or be suspected of having a disability. Here's something you may not know, pro tip. Transition IEPs may not even be clearly stated by your IEP team. What am I saying? I'm saying that transition IEPs can also be called a plan review, an articulation meeting, an annual meeting, or just a transition IEP. Here's something else that even makes it more challenging. So many times as a special education advocate, I see these transition IEPs also take place at the same time as a regular annual review, a triennial review. Oh my goodness, it gets so confusing, and that's exactly why I'm so excited that you're watching this video, because I'm going to give you a ton of tools and resources so you can advocate like a pro. To get things started, make sure to watch this video first that lays out 5 things that you want to do before every single IEP so that you know what to ask for and how to get it, and you can feel so much more confident walking in that door. Grab that link in the description box below. So now you know what is a transition IEP. Let's talk about IEP truths, specifically why transitioning schools is going to be harder for your child with an IEP. So the research is clear. Students who are transitioning to a new school or a new setting are more than likely going to have more significant challenges than a typical child. What am I talking about? I'm talking about because your child is already neurodiverse, has a disability, or you think they might be suspected of having a disability, things that are already challenging for them to begin with when it comes to executive functioning, organization, task completion, academics, social emotional, peer relations, behavior, discipline, all of that is going to be exacerbated. This also has to do with the fact that during a transition IEP, both physical and hormonal changes are going to be taking place. What am I saying? I'm saying that as a school psychologist for so many years, at transition IEPs, I saw so many times that the schools did not have the right balance of strengths and unique learning needs to get the programming recommendations in place for your child. Now it's time to dig deeper. So here's the deal. IDEA law does not actually call these meetings a transition IEP when you look it up on Google. However, IDEA law is very clear that your team must convene a new IEP if they're going to make a change in placement. What am I saying? I'm saying that your team is required to convene a new IEP and give you something called prior written notice when your team is recommending a change in the identification, evaluation, or placement of your child. And sure enough, because your child is transitioning schools, that's a change in placement. So what am I saying? I'm saying that your school must provide you with prior written notice before they can make that placement change, and that's got to be in writing. Make sure to grab my first free guide about prior written notice that lays out the 7 things that your school has to tell you and why it makes such a difference so that you can advocate like a pro. Grab that link below. Before we dig into 2 different types of transition meetings for your child, I first want to spell out what you need to target inside the transition IEP. What am I talking about? Here are 5 things that you want to look for inside the transition IEP so you can advocate like a pro. Number 1, present levels. This is going to be called the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, also known as PLOF. What do you want to look for inside the PLOF? You want to look for baselines, spelling out in a narrative what it looks like, and related service providers or even the special education teacher, what are their recommended changes or adjustments? Number 2, IEP goals. So what am I looking for as a special education advocate? I look for on transition IEPs, the IEP progress reports, if it spells out if your child has met or not met IEP goals, and the recommended adjustments or changes that your team thinks would be appropriate because of that placement change. Number 3, you're going to want to look for accommodations and modifications. This is one of the areas that tends to get missed all the time. So why does this matter? You want to talk to your team and ask them, are the accommodations and the modifications still appropriate? Do we need to make changes in light of my unique learning needs for my child? Is this accommodation or modification appropriate for middle school or high school? And how can we make changes that are meeting my child's unique learning needs? To get you started, make sure to watch this video when it comes to navigating the IEP in terms of what you want to look for first in your child's education plan. Grab that link in the description box below. 4, services. Your team needs to look at if your child's needs need to change in terms of the minutes, intensity, frequency of those services. So many times as a special education advocate, I would see kids come when I worked at a high school and their services and adjustment, the minutes would be so messed up because the team did not consult with the next school in terms of understanding what that child needs. Again, it's going to go back to that balance, having the right amount of support in the right areas. Number 5, placement. So this has to do with the location of where all those services and supports are going to take place. And this also known as the offer of free appropriate public education, also known as FAPE. So all of these 5 parts that I talked about need to be spelled out and crystal clear inside your child's IEP. So now you know a little bit more in terms of those 5 things that you want to look for inside the transition IEP. Let's dig into specifics. specifically when it comes to the transition from elementary to middle school. So I'm going to put on my lens of being a school psychologist here. Here's what happened so many times when I worked at a middle school. We would have students come to the new school, and at the transition IEP, they didn't clarify with the parents whether the child was going to be pulled out, if they're going to have resource class, if they're going to have an elective, if they're going to have something called guided study, if it's going to be push-in support, and if your child has a paraprofessional, also known as a one-to-one aide, in terms of how that aide is allocated and how they're going to be working with your child is not spelled out. So what am I saying? I'm saying the bottom line here is if your team does not have enough information, or you think there might need to be additional areas that have not been evaluated, this is your clue that additional special education assessments are warranted. What can you do? By submitting a letter through what's called a parent letter of attachment, spelling out what you want tested and why. So here's the thing, as a special education advocate and even as a school psych, I saw so many families submit a letter and they're like, I want testing. Well, you're not going to get the quality testing that you need. And that's exactly why I created something called an additional testing request template. Inside my digital guide, it has a letter that's ready to go and so easy to use that helps you clarify and tell the team what you want your child tested for in terms of the scope and sequence of the evaluation, if you want related service providers to do testing, what types of measures they should be working on, and basically you're spelling out to the school what you want done and how you want them to respond to you in writing. It's a game changer and it's what I use with my clients every day. Grab that link in the description box below. So we've talked about the transition from elementary to middle school. Now it's time to dig into the big stuff, specifically transition IEPs for middle school to high school. So what are high school IEPs going to be made of? Let me spell that out for you. Typically, a high school IEP is going to be focused on credits towards graduation, if your child is going to be getting a high school diploma or what's called a certificate of completion. I'm in California, so your team is going to talk about A through G requirements, which means your child is on a college prep track or not. All the big stuff matters because you want your child in high school to be able to be successful and get either a diploma or certificate of completion. So here's the truth. Pro tip. So many times at a middle school, when children transition to a high school, that IEP is no longer appropriate. What am I saying? I'm saying that your team might need to make those adjustments again when it comes to accommodations, placement, services, service location, and your team very well could say, you know what? Your child is doing so well, we're going to exit your child. That's exactly why I want you to check out this video that spells out what to do if your team is talking about, oh my gosh, we want to exit your child from special education, or they want to exit a related service provider and you're not ready. Grab that link in the description box below. Now that you know all this, let's get into the most important part of this video. Those 3 red flags you want to watch out for. Flag number 1, when your school is telling you, you know what, let's make a ton of changes on the IEP, meaning they're going to be changing the placement, the location of services. Oh my goodness. Here's the deal, pro tip. As a school psychologist, when I saw students come to the high school or come to the middle school and there had been a ton of changes on the IEP right at the transition meeting, this was really a bad option because you don't know how your child is going to adjust. So the best thing you can do is keep things in terms of the supports and services relatively the same, and then wait for that transition meeting and then recalibrate and reconvene a meeting at the beginning of the next school year. Number 2, if your team is talking about changing your child's placement in terms of being on a certificate of completion instead of getting a high school diploma, this is one of the biggest red flags. And here's why. Pro tip. So many times families come to me and they're like, wait a second, my child is not on the high school diploma track. And I say yes, because look at the IEP. There's a very, very small box there and it says progress towards goals. And they weren't even informed that they're not going to be getting a high school diploma for their child. So when your team is talking about modifications and if they're talking about making that adjustment to a certificate of completion, that's definitely a red flag that you want to watch out for. Number 3, if your team is talking about exiting your child before the transition meeting. So why is this such a red flag? So many times as a school psychologist and a special education advocate, we would have students who exited from special education and the parents were like, no. Everyone said things were great when they were in 8th grade or when they were in 5th grade. Then they come to high school. This is exactly why I was talking about earlier, that you don't want to make significant changes in placement or services at the transition meeting because nobody knows exactly how your child is going to progress. So what do I recommend? I recommend educating yourself on IEP meetings. And that's exactly why I want you to check out my IEP meetings do-it-yourself workshop. Inside my one-day workshop, it spells out all the different parts of an IEP so you understand what they mean, what your team is really saying, how to read and how to understand IEPs like a pro so that you walk into the door feeling so much more confident because you know what to ask for and how to get it. Grab that link in the description box below. So now you know what is a transition IEP, how it's supposed to look, and those 3 red flags that you want to look out for. Do you have a question? Put it in the link in the description box below. You want me to do more videos or expand on more on transition IEPs? Yep, put it there too. Like and subscribe to get more videos like this in your inbox, and check us out on Instagram at Rise Ed Advocacy. Grab all those links below so that you can get all the tools and the resources you need. I'm April Rarig, your special education advocate and school psych. I can't wait to see you for our next video.